Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are now live.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. I'll call the meeting to order. Just so the board knows that George and Butts are reading a land acknowledgement statement at the beginning of all our meetings now. So I shall begin. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to Chippewa Saugeen and the Chippewa of Nawash, known as the Saugeen of the Chippewa Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors share this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons to our agenda here today? See none? The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Moved by Barry. All show of hands, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving off our agenda, declaration of pecuniary interest. You can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. Minutes of the previous minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Police Service Board meeting held on August 10th, 2021 be adopted. Is moved by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Mr. Hatt, do you have any comment or just?
No, I just go second, but we don't need one.
Okay. So there's no discussion on the motion before us. A show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. We have no delegations. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
There have been no questions received for consideration of the board.
Thank you, Carly. No correspondence. Reports and recommendations. I'll read the motion here first, that the Detachment Commander Report covering August 1st, 2021 to September 31st, 2021 be received for information. Commander Anderson, the floor is yours.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, you need a mover to put it on the floor.
Oh, I thought
For a
Mr.
second.
I'm sorry, I thought Mr. Hatt moved it.
Right, okay, well, I'm just getting to
Okay, Deborah, the floor is yours.
it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the Police Service Board report that you have in front of you there is, we're fine-tuned it, and it's a little bit more, I think, reader friendly. I'm just going to start off on page 2. Just takes a look at Georgian Bluff's calls for service for August and September versus Grey Bruce County as a whole. You'll notice that both in Grey Bruce as a whole and Georgian Bluffs, the calls for service for police are up slightly as compared to 2020. And it looks like if we prorate the numbers for 2021 and the chart below, it looks like we'll be on par with 2020 by the end of the year if all goes the same. So, but there's always there's always potential for more. I've included new in the report is victim services report on just to show the board that we are taking into consideration victims of crime, and we are making referrals to victim services for those victims of crime so that they can be better helped. On page 3, Georgian Bluffs COVID-related calls. I think it's going to end up being less than what we had for calls for service in 2020. However, I would just like to take the time, Mr. Chair, if it's all right with you, just to address the new COVID passport and the enforcement of that, if that's all right with you.
Go ahead, Commander, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know the OPP's role with respect to COVID passport enforcement or COVID vaccine confirmations. Basically, this is should be referred to your bylaw enforcement. However, I just wanted to let the board know that OPP can be there to assist bylaw if they run into any problems or fear for their safety in some way. But also that if it comes down to a trespass to property act charge, if the parties that are not complying refuse to leave the premise, then the officers can be called to assist with enforcement of trespass to property act. And I hope it doesn't get to this point, but if it does result in a criminal charge such as assault, then OPP would be taking over that investigation. So we'll enforce the provincial offenses and the criminal offenses, and the compliance would be dealt with through by law enforcement. Is there any questions with respect to that?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Barry.
Has there been any charges or anything so far, or where they had problems?
Yeah, it is. There's been no charges so far that I'm aware of. You'd have to check with your bylaw enforcement. I know that there was information that there was I think it was a gym that was posting on social media that they would not be in compliance and didn't plan to. And that was passed on to us, and it was sent back through to bylaw enforcement. But of course, again, I advise that we would back up the bylaw enforcement if needed and enforce the Trespass to Property Act or any criminal charges if applicable. So,
Okay.
but that's the only one I'm aware of so far.
Okay, thanks.
Also, I think new to this report is your false alarms. So that's usually when it's a keying error or it could be a problem with the alarm itself, and OPP are called through the monitoring company. We do have to send officers out to that. Sometimes we're canceled, but it does take up a lot of our time. And so far in 2021, we've had 44 of those false alarms. Also, I'm including 911 hangups. 911 hangups are usually, strangely enough, the #1 calls for service, not just to our detachment, but surrounding detachments all have this issue. It's misdialed cell phones or pocket dials or kids playing with the phone, that sort of idea. But officers are generally required to attend 911 calls just in case it is somebody that's in distress and needs assistance of police. That's our policy. Next, sorry, the violent crime. As you can see by the charts below in the graph, that violent crime in general, not only in Georgian Bluffs, but in Grey Bruce is trending downward, which is a good sign. Unless anybody has any questions with respect to that.
The board have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead, Deborah.
Okay. So page 4 is our property crime, and it just lays out, covers off fraud investigations, break-and enters, auto thefts. Auto thefts are down quite a bit, are trending down. Theft, generally speaking, and mischiefs. And again, that's Georgian Bluffs as compared to Grey Bruce as a whole. Drug investigations. I think they're going to be down slightly in 2021 as compared to previous years. And it shows a comparison. It is trending downwards in Grey Bruce as a whole and slightly down in Georgian Bluffs. And just as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, to previous Police Service Board report, I did have our analysts, as requested, take a look at the analytics for OPP, Grey Bruce detachment, with respect to opioid use in Georgian Bluffs from January 2018 to December 31st, 2020. So it just took a look at the last 3 years and your overdoses And unfortunately, I have to report that as compared to 2018 and 2019, 2020 saw a significant increase with respect to opioid-related calls for service. So in 2018, there was 3, in 2019, 2, and in 2020, it jumped to 14. It's still not a huge increase in this, in relation to other areas, but certainly concerning. In 2020, there were 4 non-fatal opioid overdoses. 2 were fentanyl and 2 were unknown drug. There was 3 involving trafficking of fentanyl, and 2 were fatal opioid overdoses. 1 was suspected fentanyl, the other one's an unknown substance. There was a suspicion that there was an increase for 2020, and in fact there was. 2021, we have a slightly lower number of calls for service in Georgian Bluffs for opioid-related calls for service, but 2020 seems to be the problem year. Just moving on then to other investigations. So domestic disputes, I think that it'll be either on par with 2020 or down slightly for the year, depending how the rest of the year plays out. And you can see the calls for service for domestics and missing persons. Missing persons down quite a bit, but as compared to the Grey Bruce as a whole there. So, both in Grey Bruce as a whole and Georgian Bluffs, domestics and domestics and missing persons are both trending downward. And so on page 6 of the report, a report from our crime unit for August 1st to the end of September, 78 benchmark occurrences. That's quite high. They included 11 sudden deaths, 13 sexual assaults, 19 criminal harassment investigations, 2 very in-depth missing persons cases. Both were resolved, thank goodness, and 1 indecent act that was followed up on. Besides the benchmark occurrences, of course, our crime units help and guide our frontline officers for the more complicated calls for service. Along with the benchmark occurrences, of course, there's always following up on leads, preparing for court. We're continuing to investigate several ongoing homicides in Grey Bruce. You may have heard on the news, we have found a suspicious death, and there has been a charge laid just this past weekend with respect to a suspected homicide up in northern Bruce Peninsula. So that's a brand new one that's now on the crime unit's plate. They also completed a preliminary inquiry for first-degree murder in the Solomon homicide. That usually takes at least a couple of weeks of preparation before they go and testify at a prelim. And for the Chisor homicide, 1 male was arrested for second-degree murder. We've also partnered with Hamilton Police on the Chisor homicide, and that was the found human remains in Southgate. It looks like one of the homicide investigations resulted in a plea to manslaughter, and that was on October 4th of 2021, so that one's been concluded. Page 7 is our street crime unit. So our street crime unit, our Detective Sergeant Jamie Blair is now back in that position. He did a stint in West Region as the acting staff sergeant for street crime, and he's now back in his chair here. We had acting Detective Sergeant Jeff Dudley was filling in for him, and he did an outstanding job while he was here. It's a very busy unit. One of the big emphasis this summer for the street crime unit was the illegal cannabis grows in Grey County over the summer, and the investigations continue into September. We learned that because of the previous search warrant that was executed for an illegal cannabis grow in Meaford, resulted in a neighboring property closing down their shop. So it had a far-reaching community impact for sure. So they're also investigating 2 vehicle thefts, one in Southgate and one in Chatsworth, and they have a person of interest that they're looking at, and hopefully that we can conclude something there. As always, our street crime unit is limited number of officers, but we have assistance from surrounding street crime units that will come and help with warrants, for instance, on the day of execution. But also our street crime unit does the same in return, and does work outside of Grey Bruce to assist other units. And just wanted to advise the board that we have a new street crime detective constable, Katie White. She was a successful candidate that applied for and got the job, and so she'll be in the unit for a 5-year stint. And she was recognized during her application for the work she did as a frontline officer with respect to street level drugs and property crime. So it's well deserving. So she'll be on a bit of training for a while, and then she'll return and assist our unit.
Deborah, please pass on our congratulations to Catherine and getting her new appointment.
I will. Thank you very much, sir. So on page 8 is our traffic e-ticketing report. This is report is generated right from the e-ticketing website, and so it has the number of charges, the number of warnings, and Grey Bruce versus Georgian Bluffs as a whole. And then below it gives you an outline of the 10 top charges that we've had in the past couple of months with respect to ticketing. On page 9, it'll show you where the traffic violations occurred in Georgian Bluffs, and also in Grey Bruce as a whole. As you can see, that a lot of enforcement takes place on 10 and 6 highway.
Deborah, while we have those maps in front of us and so on, the question, it relates to Georgian Bluffs, but it's a county issue. We seem to be getting a tremendous amount of complaints and different things on Grey Road 1.
Okay.
The speed limits are up and down all over the place. I've driven the road several times myself at the speed limit, and well, I'll say this, very costly, a bit over the speed limit. The safety of the road is excellent as far as I'm concerned. I just don't know if decreasing speed limits is a way to improve safety or not. I know it's a discussion we're going to have at the county level, but at the county I'm representing, Grey County, not necessarily Georgian Bluffs, but it is in our municipality. This Thursday will be quite a discussion, and I've driven the road looking at the pedestrians walking and so on, and have not seen problems myself, and it's amazing road. There is a lot of tourism and so on, but are you getting complaints through your office? It's all about that?
I can't say that I've gotten anything through me, but if you are getting the complaints either by email or name and phone number, if you want to forward them to me, I can certainly follow up on them. I would suggest that you know, look at all traffic calming measures. It's not just the speed limit. There also, Grey County does own a speed display sign. that if there's a particular area, we can request that the county put the speed display sign up. And we also have access to speed spy signs or technology. So we could, you know, if you want to suggest the best area to set up the speed spy sign, we can set it up. It's run through solar power. And we usually leave it up a week because that's the best sort of capture of information. And it does show you the time of day, excuse me, the direction of travel, and it'll give you an idea of how many cars were speeding over the posted speed limit. Excuse me 1 second. Got a tickle in my throat here. So after the speed spy's up for a week, we download the data and I can send you a report. So that might help your committee in understanding the flow of traffic and what's happening.
Just, it is a county issue, and the county sets some policies on county road, obviously, but it does impact Georgian Bluffs residents. It will be quite a topic Thursday, but
yeah, some of the other measures you can take a look at is a community safety zone. The criteria for that can be found online. Usually there's a, you know, presence of a school or a old age home or a hospital, residential, that sort of thing. And basically the fines would be double that if you're caught speeding in a community safety zone. So, you know, that you can take a look at that too. In some of the slower areas, they've put up speed bumps, but that's usually in a very slow residential area. But also the permanent speed display signs, as a reminder, I'm sure you've seen them where you're driving and it flashes your speed limit. It shows what the speed limit is and flashes your speed, and you know, flashes a message like slow down, that sort of thing. So I'm not trying to think about presence of sidewalks versus people having to walk on the roadway or shoulder. All those things can be taken into consideration. But also, you might want to consider inviting MTO to be part of the discussion. They can assist with different measures, signage, that sort of thing too.
thanks for that, Deborah. It will be quite a topic as county council, and we've had various complaints throughout Georgian Bluffs in different areas, and thanks to you and your ladies' help, the problem seems to have gone away. Like, I think we've corrected it, and again, thank you very much for doing that.
Well, I'd be happy to participate in the meeting if you think I could help in any way.
It'll probably get to that a little bit further on. We'll see what happens Thursday, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. And just so you're aware too, that I sit on a committee with members of the community, Grey Bruce OPP, MTO, with respect to road safety. It used to be from Wyerton to Tobermory. Now it's from Flesherton because they're coming through 10 Highway and up 6.
Yeah.
So we've done a traffic count as well. MTO was able to put out counters for us during the summer, and we can compare it to previous years. So, you know, the formation of a committee like that might be helpful as well if there's concerns. But please, if there's any complaints that you think that we can help with, if you forward them to me, I can assign officers to address them.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
Thank you. So continuing on, Mr. Chair, page 10. This was the traffic paid duties for August 27th to 29th. I just wanted to thank the board and the Township of Georgian Bluffs for supporting us in our proactive traffic enforcement during the summer months and signing up for that weekend. So the weekend totals, if you see the box on the upper right-hand side, so we have 53 vehicle stops, 35 provincial offense notices issued, and 20 of those were warning and 27 of them were HTA. So the difference between the 27 and the 35, 27 of the PONs issued were Highway Traffic Act violations. The difference would be other acts that they enforce. So there might be somebody that didn't have insurance. So it would be under the Insurance Act that they would charge them, not the Highway Traffic Act. So the PONs issued were 35 for that weekend. And I like to think that too, every car stopped. When you see a police officer that has a car pulled over, about 10 other cars or any other passing cars slow down. And so that helps with the traffic safety as well. So thank you for the support in that. I appreciate that.
Deborah, is it something that you may be considering for next year too, or ongoing?
Yeah, definitely. It's when I every year, like I approach West Region to request pre-scheduled overtime for the summer months because our detachment's not staffed for the increased calls for service for July and August. That wouldn't be fiscally responsible. But we do need some assistance just to answer our calls for service, which is all reactive, right? But I can't get approval for proactive measures. And so I do appreciate the townships that did participate, stepping up and helping us out with that. And I think it really helped reduce well, it helped with the traffic safety over the summer and the increased number of vehicles and people in the area. So.
Barry, go ahead.
A letter to our MP requesting funds to help us out for proactive. Do you think, Mr. Mayor, that could be done through council to help to fund some of these programs?
I think I'd like to see something come from Deborah, how her program set out and how you'd like us to approach it. Deborah, I think it'd be better if it come to you, to our council or whatever, like you did before.
Well, some of the things that we're working on, which I have to wait to sort of see how that plays out, is that unlike this past summer and the previous few summers, by the end of this year, we should be fully staffed. So we did have some vacancies and we should be fully staffed. If that's the case, we might be able to address the increased calls for service through just adjusting one shift. So rather than starting at 6 in the morning, we'd have them start at noon when there's more traffic on the highways. There's that, and once we are fully staffed, I would like to take a look at creating a full-time traffic unit. And so that might mean, although it might mean taking an officer from a platoon and putting them on a traffic unit, but I think that the work that they take away from the platoon, it won't affect them being able to operate and answer calls for service. So that is something I'm looking at. However, I feel like in order for a traffic unit to be successful, we're going to need supervision for that. And we currently don't have, I'd like to perhaps approach the boards or the board, depending on when that comes into play next year, for an enhancement to our contract, to include an additional sergeant's position and perhaps a couple of traffic officers. I think that with the traffic that we get, not only in the summer months, but also because of the weather related events that we have here, that a traffic unit would be really useful. So that's some of the things I'm working on, but I'd like to maybe inquire if there's, with our grant, sort of a grant management unit that we have in OPP, to see if there perhaps are any grants that we can apply for either equipment, more radars, that sort of thing. Or whether it would pay for personnel. So those are some of the things I'm looking into. But once I get those answers, then I can maybe take a look at approaching our MPP for for some sort of assistance with that, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair.
No, that sounds good. I think that would be the appropriate channel if that you do it first, and then we can follow up with letters of support and so on after the fact.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. The next is a list of your motor vehicle collisions. And most of them appear to be either animals or driver error. The driver error ones would have been dealt with through enforcement. I don't see anything that's of concern for the township with respect to engineering or having a look at a particular intersection, unless there's something that jumps out at you there.
Right. The board of any, I have no specific inquiries or anything. So.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So on page 13, we have impaireds and over 80s. Georgian Bluffs versus the Grey Bruce as a whole, we're probably going to be on par or slightly over what we were in 2020, unfortunately. One of the new reports or portions of the report is a suspect apprehension pursuits. I just wanted to report to the board on that so that they were aware of any pursuits that we had during the reporting period. Traffic complaints, just looking at September and August 2021 versus September, August 2020. I think we're going to be a little bit lower in our traffic complaints than what we were. August 2020 was quite high, actually. Noise complaints, really nothing of significance there. And animal complaints are down this year. And just reporting on Georgian Bluffs municipal bylaw calls for service.
Deborah, our new GSS bylaw that people we have in place in Georgian Bluffs now, do you find that they're easy to work with and it's an improvement to our bylaw enforcement?
I can't say that I've had any interaction with them with respect to Georgian Bluffs at all.
Oh.
I mean, I could canvass my detachment and just see, but I believe, are they not the same ones in South Bruce Peninsula?
Yes, they are.
Yes, and so I have met with them with respect to South Bruce Peninsula, and they seem pretty agreeable. Seasons have opened too. With the, that might have something to do with it, getting to their locations.
And tell me what the speed limit is on a county road or municipal road that they can drive. Is it like 35 miles or 30 kilometers or 60 kilometers an hour? Or
yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. And it depends too on bylaws and whether or not they're allowed to use ATVs on the roadways in each municipality. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So then on page 14, we just have the number of paid duty hours that our detachment has participated in. And 2021 is definitely more, and that probably has to do with the proactive traffic enforcement that we did. On page 15 is Nick Wilson, our media officer, just reporting on the number of media releases that he has done. And just there's highlights or breakdowns of the type of media releases he's done for August and September 2021. He also does our community service work as well. And that's through bike patrols and assisting with different committees. And just an outline of the type of events that he would attend and go to. So.
Is there any way that they can do press release on this telemarketing that's on in the last little while. A lot of it's going on. Like every day, you get about 2 or 3 calls. Your bank account, and stuff like this, and
Part of the
seems-
Canadian Revenue Agency and that sort of thing.
yeah. And
So we have a unit called Phone Busters that tracks that and puts that out. And they have, if you Google Phone Busters, they'll come up with their number and the tips that they put out. So they look after that for us. Because it's not just in this area, it's really across the province. So,
thank you.
So our court bureau is on page 19. We processed 13 bails. We had 17 warrant-related incidents and completed 81 criminal informations that were sworn to by our court bureau. And below that is our record checks. We still are doing them at detachment. They haven't centralized them yet. I can't wait till they do that. So we did 33 criminal record checks and 162 vulnerable sector checks, which are much more involved. Our part-time officers served 17 summons and subpoenas. They did 45 criminal fingerprints, as well as 19 civilian fingerprints, and that goes along with the vulnerable sector checks. Sometimes they have to have fingerprints taken to prove their identity. Our auxiliary unit, so we have 9 active members, so we do have some vacancies there. If anybody is, if anybody is interested in serving as an auxiliary member, all the information is online on how to do that and fill out the paperwork. But also if they have any questions, if you forward their information to me, I'll have our auxiliary liaison officer get in touch with them and help them out. So there, I'm sorry, the auxiliary unit hours that they participated in patrols not available right now. And they are starting back up to their regular bi-monthly meetings now that we have some protocols in place. I think this is new too to the report. The Mobile Health Unit and Addictions Response Team, MHART, the number of calls for service that we have with respect to that. That's our mental health urgent response team. I think that, so I'm working with MHART to, or CAMH to bring to our detachment a embedded clinical mental health worker, similar to what they have in the surrounding areas. We're the only detachment in West Region, OPP West Region, that does not have an embedded clinician. So we're working on bringing that to Grey Bruce. We're just looking for some funding for that. This is a big help to our officers. Wellington County, from where I come from, they have an embedded clinician, 3 of them actually, and they've seen a reduction in by 30% of the number of apprehensions under the Mental Health Act. And that's very significant to our frontline work, because usually officers have to guard that patient until they're admitted into hospital. So it does take officers off the road for a significant amount of time, as well as the fact that, each emergency visit usually costs the taxpayers around $2,500, I'm told. So there'll be significant savings that way. So we're working on that, and I'll keep the board posted on how that works out. But I'm really looking forward to bringing that here. The last page on 21 is Noteworthy Events. Just wanted to let you know of some good news stories with respect to our detachment. The first one in June is our street crime unit. I put them in for recognition for the work they did on the warrant in Meaford that resulted in over $12 million worth of product being seized. In July, PC Ferris and Coghlan are both emergency response team members, and they received recognition for their participation in a 3-day track of a suspect in a domestic violence incident. And after 3 days in the heat, with all their equipment on, they were able to locate the person and arrest them. In August, Commissioner Creek was up in this area. He was riding the fat bikes on Sabo Beach. And while they were out there, they had 3 calls for service. So we got a little taste of what we do in this area. And he had a very good time up here. So it was nice for him to get a chance to speak to the members of our detachment. And the visit went really well. PC Stapleton is a very young officer, newer officer with our detachment. And he received recognition for his role in talking down a standoff with an armed subject. And he was able to de-escalate and showed great patience and understanding, and resulted in the person being apprehended and no injuries to anybody. So that's always a good thing. PC Chapman, McOwen, and PC Smith all received recognition for their efforts in locating, treating, and apprehending a suicidal barricaded male. And their quick action resulted again in nobody being hurt. And Mr. Chair, that's my report. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
What an excellent report, Commander. It's just a great way, easy to understand. It's just a great report. And thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the feedback, Mr. Chair. And if there's anything you'd like to see in the report or deletions to the report that you're not concerned with, I'd be happy to take those suggestions.
No, it was a great report. Does the board have any comments?
Dwight, I'll just say, I was going to say the same thing, like the illustrations that you give us and the way it's presented, it just continues to improve. So it's easy to read and it's very informative. So I don't have any questions because after reading that, it's well done.
Now,
That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed the new format for sure.
Yeah. Now, anybody
No.
can go online and go through the same report, can they not?
This is posted on our website, Barry.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to get on and see your report, they can go on and go through it. That's good. Yeah. That's great. I just like it. It worked very well. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, good job, Deborah. You're just trying to outdo the sergeant that was here before replacing you.
Honestly, when I saw the report that was previously presented, I thought, I don't know what I'm going to talk about here. It's all just a bunch of numbers. So yeah, that was my motivation to change it, but also, you know, to have something that's more reader friendly for the boards. Absolutely.
That's very good.
I think you succeeded very good. It was well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's, we did have a motion before us. All in favor of the motion to accept the report? I guess it's carried. There's a storm coming in here and our internet's cutting in and out. That's why I keep fading away. We have no unfinished business, so we're down to new business. Now we have a crime plot, and I believe, Carly, this was submitted by a council member of Georgian Bluffs.
Yes.
Yes, this was circulated to the committee by our councillor, Kathy Coburn. I believe it was just circulated so that the board members were aware of the service.
With the way new format of our report from Commander Anderson, I think she's touched every base and gives all kinds of information for anybody that wants to go on our website to see it. So I really think that report is answering any question anyone could probably have.
Yeah,
Does
and
board-
I checked into there's a cost for this other port that when you go like say to Saugeen Shores, a company comes in and does that for them, so there will be a cost to municipality. And
So there is a cost for Deborah's report too.
yeah. We'll pay her. We'll pay her.
I don't know. It's submitted as information, but I really feel with your new format with your reports and so on, it gives us a ton of information and everything that I believe that Council Coburn was referring to with this email that she forwarded to us. I just think it's well covered in that report.
Dwight, I have a question. This crimeplot.com, the two examples they gave us were Midland Police and Saugeen Shores, which I assume are both municipally police enforced. Are the OPP, is the OPP participating in this type of crimeplot.com anywhere?
My report that would help them or answer any of the questions.
Thank you, Deborah. Carly, you heard that. I'm quite sure you'll forward that on to Commander.
Yes, certainly.
Certainly. Well, no, I looked at both of them. I thought your report first, when I read the email, I thought I was reading your report, but you've answered every question. Like I felt it's very good myself.
Great.
So we'll just
One
accept that. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm certainly open to any changes. So yeah, I'll take a look at the email and see if there's anything that would satisfy what the councillor is looking for.
You'll understand, like when you read the email, it's just a different format of an area like Saugeen Shores and showed where the crimes occurred and the numbers and different things. And the mayor's right. Your report is not leaving me with any questions. So that's why I was wondering if the OPP were involved anywhere else in this. And obviously it sounds like they're not.
Not that I'm aware.
Yeah.
I think it was mainly municipal police forces, but we're just way a step ahead of them with our OPP. So we'll just accept that for information. I thought maybe that comment might make our rate a little bit cheaper next year. It's the only reason why I said it. No, we're down. Moving on for agenda, we're down to our next meeting is December. Board meeting is December 7th.
Correct.
It was supposed to be on the week
Thought we
after.
had, okay. All right, that's our next board meeting. If we no other business here today, I'll ask for someone to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Peter, that we adjourn. We are now adjourned. Thank you, Deborah. Thanks very much.
Thank you. See you
Thanks,
December.
everybody.
Thanks, Dwight.
Right.